Hi guys, it's Mr. Corn here for a little bit of Chapter 1 quiz on Driver Ed. You're gonna take the quiz after you watch this video. This is the basic Chapter 1, first chapter of the Driver Ed book called Managing Risk When Driving. I'm going to go over a few different things. All the questions on the quiz will be answered through this video, plus some of the other stuff that you're looking at today in our unit. What I want to talk about first is nearly more than half or more of all of you out there that are drivers will be involved in a collision or convicted of a traffic offense during their first year of driving. Kind of a scary statistic. Now, I'm hoping that my driver ed students are not part of that half. Maybe you're part of the other half that aren't going to get anything. But about half, a little more than half, of you guys will be involved in some sort of small, hopefully a minor collision, as well as a simple traffic violation of some sort. As you're under the age of 20, all of you in here are under the age of 20, and your fatality rate per million miles driven is much higher than anybody else's. Okay, we know that under 20 years old, your insurance rates reflect it, and all those things. And unfortunately, you're kind of stuck with that insurance and everything else because you're a little bit higher risk because of lack of experience most of you have. Okay, one of the things you want to think about is the risk. Okay, we have risk out there. You get in that car every day, we take it for granted, but you have risk. Okay, and when you want to assess or manage the risk with your driving, you want to consider the possibility that a dangerous situation is going to occur. Okay, you're watching down the road, you're like, man, what could happen? That car's coming towards me, it could swerve into my lane. Okay, it could be any number of things. And also be prepared to take action, as well as consider the consequences. If I drive to the right, where am I going to go? Am I going to a field? Am I going to somebody's front yard? Am I going to drive off a cliff? Okay, so you're considering those actions as well. Those are all part of enhancing and assessing risk, and you making risk part of everything that you get out there. Okay, parents and teens, you got to work together. Okay, to provide instruction to a new driver. It's not all driver ed. Now, in this case, your parents are the driving instructors, but normally in driver ed, I teach the driving, or somebody else teaches the driving, and then your parents supplement that. So it's a little weird situation, but both of them need to work as a team. Okay, and remember, if your parents have any questions along the way, they are more than welcome to call me, email me, anything along the way. Okay, one of the weird things is when you're out there looking at fault in an accident, most drivers believe they're not at fault. They don't believe they have any fault. Well, I don't know why I hit you. Oh, the fact that I drove across the wrong side of the road and hit you, no, it wasn't my fault. Okay, that's what people think. Okay, that's kind of sad. Okay, completing this course, okay, will not guarantee that you become a safe driver. Okay, that's up to you and only you. Okay, to become a safer driver. Okay, I can't do that. You can listen to everything I say and become a horrible driver, or you can listen to everything I say and become a good driver. It's really up to your decision making. Okay, so that's kind of an interesting little piece that you got to consider. Okay, and what I'm doing is I'm going through all the test questions, kind of talking about the chapter a little bit. Okay, what is the greatest advantage? One of the things they mentioned in chapter 1, of course, you don't have a book because of COVID. The greatest advantages of a parent-teen driving agreement is that you're communicating with your parent. Okay, don't go out and just steal mom and dad's car. You got your license now, and you're going to go off and the car's gone, and mom and dad have to get to work. You need to agree on things if you're using mom and dad's car. And even if you're using your own car, you still probably have rules. Okay, you got to be home by a certain time or whatever that might be. So kind of have that communication ahead of time. Talk about insurance. When they go to buy an insurance policy, go with them. Okay, so you understand insurance as well as they do. Okay. One of the biggest problems out there is overestimating your ability. Okay, young drivers, I find, are either nervous or they think they're the best driver in the world. Okay, those are usually the two types of young drivers I get. And within a short period of time, that nervous driver becomes a more confident driver, and that overconfident driver starts to learn a little bit that maybe I'm not so perfect anymore. Okay, maybe I need to learn some things. Okay, if you overestimate your abilities, you can respond late to a situation, you can respond in an inappropriate manner, or you could fail to respond at all to the situation. Maybe you're driving along, and I've had kids do this. They get into a tight situation, and like, what do I do? What do I do? Okay, As a driving instructor, part of my job is to help teach you when you get in those tight situations, or to avoid the tight situations. But when you do get into them, how to accommodate that. Okay, that's real important. In New York State, we talked a little about our driving, our licensing the first day of class. We have a graduated driving license system. Okay, that gradual driver's license system has 3 stages, and most do. We have the permit stage, the junior license stage, and then that limits, permit you have to drive with an adult. Junior license, you can drive between, after 6 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning up to 9 o'clock at night. Okay. And then after that, you get your full license, and that you can drive whenever you want. Okay. You got pretty much adult freedoms of driving. Okay. Like I said before, understand that you're probably going to get into an accident or a fender bender in a parking lot or something like that your first year of driving, or get a ticket. Okay, so be a little careful about that. Another thing that's really interesting, when we think of accidents, we think of somebody hitting us or somebody coming into a collision with us. Okay, half or more of the accidents out there are single vehicle crashes. You crashing into a tree, you crashing into something, a parked car, any number of things. Okay. Another thing, we talked a little about graduated driver's license having 3 stages. They usually have restrictions on nighttime driving. They usually require supervised driving like ours does, and limit the number of passengers in a car. Okay, those are all the factors that usually go into graduated driver's licenses. You're driving down a road and you're heading towards a parked car, and you're going to try to miss it. But as you get closer to it, you have to steer harder, increase your steering to avoid that car. So the more prepared you are ahead of time, the better. Okay, it's going to give you more leeway when you get down. If you're gently turning to avoid that parked car, it makes it a lot easier than, doing this, or maybe sliding the car, or doing some other damage to it, or going off the road because you steered too quickly. Okay. Okay, one of the things is we have, like we talked about a little bit earlier, is we have risk. Okay, part of driving is a risk. Risk is always present. Risk is always affected by all road users, including walkers and people walking their pets and bicyclists and all those things. And risk can be managed by your own driving. Okay, you can always be aware of those things. Sometimes, though, we have this problem with actual risk and perceived risk. Okay, they are not the same thing. Okay, perceived risk is very different than what the actual risk is. You may perceive it to be less, or you may perceive it to be more, depending on your personality. But perceived and actual risk are very different from one another. Okay. Another thing that gets mentioned in the quiz and in the book as well, that I'm not going to really have time to talk about with you guys, is it takes the average driver about 5 years to become a competent, decent driver. The problem with that is after 5 years from now, you're 22, 23, and you're out there driving on the road, and you're developing some of those negative skills because you're going to work and you're driving people around and you're doing those things that adults do, but you start getting lackadaisical. You're feeling like a better driver. Okay, and it's one of the reasons why New York State gives you a discount on your insurance if you take a defensive driving course every few years. Okay, so just kind of think about that. Risk. Again, we've talked about risk throughout. There's a definition of risk. It's called the possibility of injury, damage, or loss. Okay, nice and simple definition. And that's all the stuff in Chapter 1. I tried to keep it short, about 8 minutes. And you guys have a wonderful day, and good luck on your quiz.